I want to talk to you today about one of the most frustrating things that happens as an artist. And that's when people look at your work and say, I love it, but they don't buy it. I'm sure you've heard it before, maybe even hundreds of times. And in this video, I'm going to break down what's going on there, why they don't buy, and what are some concrete steps that you can do to turn those I love it's, but where they walk away, into I love it, and they get their wallet out to take the painting home with them. So why does this happen? It's not just people being polite, and they're not intentionally trying to steal your creative energy when they get your hopes up just to have them dashed as they walk away. It's because simply an I love it by itself is not enough. And let me explain here. It's not just enough that they love your art. They need to love your art more than any of the other artists in your price point, or potentially even at that festival or at the gallery where you're showing your work. Because here's the thing. Art buyers are like kids in a candy store. They walk around looking at all the different booths and all the different prices, and they're comparing. They're comparing the things they'd like to have next to how much they actually cost. And to really understand what's going on, you need to understand something called the Pareto principle. Now I'm going to move over here to this little homemade whiteboard here to demonstrate this. But hopefully this is going to illuminate for you kind of why this happens. And it's either going to be incredibly empowering or it's going to make you very depressed. But it is what's going on. So the Pareto principle, basically, it's a principle discovered by a civil engineer that says in any group, any competitive group where people are vying for the same thing, a very small number of that group will have the same total sales as the entire rest of the group. And that often comes about the square root of that number. So let's take a look at what that means at a typical art festival where there's, say, 100 artists displaying their work. And let's assume, for the sake of this, that there's a total of $100,000 in sales for all of the artists. Well, the square root of 100 is 90 right here. So that means if we look at the total sales of this top 10 artists, they'll be equal to the total sales of the other 90 artists. So we're going to get 50K in sales here and 50K in sales here. And that's for this entire group of the bottom 90. Now, what's really important to note here too, though, is this is not a straight line. So it's not like the line of sales goes up until we hit the highest level. The line of sales stays relatively flat until we get to the Pareto group, and then it spikes dramatically. And why this is really important, you've really got to pay attention here. You could be this artist right here. You could be the 15th most popular artist at the festival. Your sales are not going to be that much more than the person who's the 90th most popular or the 10th worst artist there, because the sales remain relatively stable till you reach that group. So it's really important to be in this group of the most popular, the most desirable artists. It's not good enough just to be better than the majority of other artists out there. You need to be in that very small Pareto group. And the other thing that's really important about this graph is this also tracks the same line, which in Canada we call the hockey stick. This tracks the price point of your work. If you were to look at my work up until 2005, it gradually increased in value until I had that festival at the Toronto Art Expo where my sales went through the roof. Then the price point of my work just skyrocketed. And I remember talking to one of my gallery owners. He was the first one that ever explained this to me. And he said, you're about to move off of the blade of the hockey stick onto the shaft. And until or unless you get past this point and onto the shaft, you'll always struggle as an artist. And the thing that's kind of either very, very kind of encouraging or very scary is often the difference between these artists here that are still amongst that low group and the ones that are in the Pareto. It can be very, very tiny, slight incremental improvements of the art that can get you there. It's like if you are a college football player in the United States. Everybody playing college football in the NCAA is a really, really good football player. But it's those little nuanced differences that aren't actually even quantifiable sometimes that make the difference between one going on to have a multi-million-dollar career in the NFL and the other one just being one of the better football players in their local men's rec league. So the key thing about here is to get into that Pareto group, you need to maximize every single thing about your art. So I already mentioned that to be in the Pareto group, if you're in that mid-level kind of range of artists or low level, you just need to be the best value in that group of artists who people like. Because here's what happens at an art festival. People will go around, particularly those where they have like a maximum price point that they're going to look at. They'll go around looking at all of the artists whose work falls within their price range. And then they'll pick probably the top 5 artists that they're interested in. And one of two things will happen. If there's one artist whose work they love more than anyone else's, they'll buy that artist. But if they kind of like them all the same, they're going to go for the best value. And that means they're going to go for the cheapest one. So if you're in that case, if you're in that situation, you have one option. And I know this is going to be sacrilege to some of you. It's like you can lower your price. You can be the lowest price point in that similar group of artists, and you're going to have more sales. But of course, who wants to be the dollar store version of an artist? The second option, and the one that I recommend, is to become the best, the most desirable artist within that price point. And if you do that, you will then increase your sales and get the majority of sales in that price point. And if you really want to be successful, you want to actually target those serious collectors where they don't really have an upper limit in terms of their budget, or even if they do, it's quite high. But in that case, you need to not only be the most desirable artist in a certain price point, you need to be the most desirable artist, period, for that group of people, or at least for enough of those people. So how do we go about doing that? Well, in the village of commercial sales, we do it by achieving mastery. Mastery of technical skill, mastery of composition and color, creating works that resonate with the public, and creating works of undeniable beauty. In the village of commercial sales, those artists that can do this at the highest level are the ones that are going to end up in this Pareto group. They're going to get the majority of the sales, and they're going to sell their work at much higher prices. So what are some concrete steps that you can take to move into that Pareto group? Well, the first involves a brutally honest look at you and your art and your skills. It's like looking in the mirror before swimsuit season. It's unpleasant, but it's necessary. And the first thing I would recommend you look at is your drawing skills. Have you absolutely mastered the craft of drawing? Because look, drawing is not just about what we think of as drawing. Drawing is teaching yourself to see like an artist, to see the world broken down in terms of shapes, edges, values, colors, contrasts. And it's also the ability to have your hand make the mark that your mind envisages. So whether you're painting in abstract or whether you're painting in high realism, the ability to draw is always going to make everything you do a little better. And that's something I call a domino, right? When we're looking at things that we might be kind of not that great in and what we could improve to be a better artist, you want to focus first on those things that are going to have the biggest impact. That when you knock them down, it's going to knock down a lot of other dominoes, and it's going to have a huge impact across the broad entirety of your work. And drawing is the backbone of just about everything in the village of commercial sales. So if you haven't mastered drawing, that's something you can start doing right now. And when I say master, I mean master. And how do you know if you've mastered drawing? Well, it's very simple. Can you go to a life drawing class? Can you draw from a live model and create, oh my God, I love it, drawings, work that just stops people in their tracks because of your mastery? If you can't do that, you haven't mastered drawing. And that's okay. That's actually good news, because when you know where you can improve, that gives you concrete steps to actually get your work to the next level. So what's the easiest way to master drawing? Well, the first and most important thing is to draw every day. So I recommend for anybody, if you haven't mastered drawing, and I would suggest that's probably most of you watching here, you should get a sketchbook, a daily sketchbook, and force yourself to draw every day for 20 minutes to a half an hour. It doesn't really matter what you draw. It doesn't matter whether you draw with a pencil, with a Sharpie marker, with Conte, with charcoal, it doesn't matter. But the fact that you are drawing every day, I guarantee you in a year, you will improve dramatically in your drawing ability. But here's the thing about drawing. It's like doing push-ups, right? You got to do the reps. You can read books about push-ups. You can watch videos about push-ups. You can join a Facebook group that's all about doing push-ups. None of that will get you to the point where you can do more push-ups. You just got to get in and do the reps. And it's the same with drawing. Nothing will make you a better drawer except for drawing. Now, there are also some specific things you can do to speed up that process, and I'm going to get into that in a video down the road, give you some specific tips about how you can kind of set up your own life drawing class to speed up the process. But the very first thing you need to be doing is just drawing every day. And then we come to the second most important domino. Again, this will have an incredible impact on everything that you do, and that is composition. When I talk about composition, I'm talking about the way in which we organize the various shapes, lines, colors, edges, color values, all of that thing, how we organize those things on our page or on our canvas. And if we do it effectively, we can choreograph a visual dance for the viewer's eye that reaches out, it grabs them, it draws them in, and it engages them in the painting. And here's the thing, just like in music, composition is the most important thing. If you think about it like music, when you hear a song for the first time and you love it, you'll find yourself just unconsciously tapping along with your foot or humming along with the music because it has reached out and engaged you. That composition has actually drawn you in. And just like in art, composition is the most important thing. You can have a very well-composed song and have it sung just by a group of untrained school children, and it can sound very, very pleasing. By the same token, you can have a poorly composed song. Even Michael Bublé can't sing it good, not without drastically changing the notes and changing the composition. And it's the same thing with art, but it's even more important in art. Because in music, you can just be a great singer. You can sing the songs and compositions written by great songwriters. But we don't have that option as an artist. Every single painting that we do starts and ends with a composition. And so we need to be masterful visual singer-songwriters. And here's some more good news. Most of your competition out there not only have not mastered composition, they actually kind of suck at it. I critique a lot of paintings, and for the most part, other than people who have really dug deep on composition, I see artists making fatal mistakes in the first few minutes of a painting when they're making decisions about how to lay out the composition. And I also see a lot of artists who have a painting that's turned out pretty good, but where just some final tweaks can take it from good to great that will make the difference between someone saying, I love it, and I love it, and I want to buy it. And for me now, I'd say I have mastered composition. But here's the good news. When I started out, I wasn't just not good at it, I actually sucked at it. I probably had the lowest level of intuitive compositional sense of any artist I have ever seen. And here's what I also found when I realized, okay, this is a weakness that I need to improve upon. It was really, really hard to find good quality instruction that actually taught me the theories behind composition. And here's the important thing to know about the theories of composition. It's not a just group of random rules written by a bunch of art critics about this makes a good painting. It's based on the fact that over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, our eyes and our minds have been hardwired to respond in very specific ways to very specific visual stimulus. So that if you do A on the canvas, it's going to cause the viewer's eye to do B, right? Whenever you put a horizontal and a vertical together and you make an X shape, that draws our eye. That's why X marks the spot on a pirate map. That's why there's crosshairs in a rifle scope. And by the same token, any long shape that's angled towards a point is going to direct our eye in a certain direction. That's why when we see an arrow, we automatically look in the direction that the arrow is pointing. Those are just two very simple explanations of it, but it gets much more complex. And if you understand all of this stuff, as I said, you can choreograph that visual dance with the viewer's eye. Now, I mentioned that when I started out, I had like zero compositional intuitive sense, and I found it very frustrating, because when I would take a workshop, or even when I was in college, you know, the instructor might say, well, this painting would be better if it had a little more red here, or if you move this shape over here, or move this tree to here. And I was like, okay, well, that helps me in this painting, but like, why should I do that? And for the most part, they couldn't tell me. They were just going on their own intuitive sense of composition. And here's the problem with that. If I don't understand the why, I can't then take that and apply it to the next painting. So I was able eventually to find a couple of books that were very good. And one was Strengthen Your Paintings Through Dynamic Composition by Frank Webb. And the other one was Harley Brown's Eternal Truths Every Artist Should Know. Those two books basically became my Bibles on learning composition. And I probably read each of those books at least 20 times over the period of a number of years. And I was also fortunate enough to take some workshops with some artists who were not only masters of composition, but they were masters of articulating the theories behind it. And that included Zoltan Szabo, Brian Adio, Christopher Schenk, and Sterling Edwards. And now when I work on a painting, I'm taking all of that knowledge that I've learned from those books, from those artists, as well as 25 years of painting experience, and I'm applying it to every single painting that I do. And I believe that's the biggest reason why I have had such success as an artist. I've sold virtually every painting I've created for over the last 20 years. And that's because they all start with a great composition. And then at the end, I tweak them to get the absolute most, to make that painting the most impactful it could be. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, do I know enough about composition? Have you mastered composition? Well, let me ask you this. Could you stand up in front of a classroom of people and teach a weekend-long workshop on composition? Could you explain all of the various elements that go into composition, why they're important, how the various things work, all of the various things that we can use as cues to draw the viewer's eye? And can you look at any painting at a glance and critique it? Can you, at a glance, determine what are some things that could be done to improve that painting, that could take it from good to great? And by the same token, can you tell the difference between a painting that just needs a little tweaking to take it to the next level? Or is it one of these situations where there were some fatal mistakes made at the beginning of the painting process? There's really no way to bring that painting to a successful end, and it's just don't do that next time. And if you can't do that and can't do it at will, then you haven't mastered composition. That's what I do. I do that every week during my weekly Zoom calls with my Hungry Artist community. And I literally have 30 seconds to look at a painting and then give a critique. And the feedback that I've gotten is that I'm very good at critiquing the paintings. And some of my students who have gone on to master composition, who have then gone on to extremely successful careers, they credit mastering composition with being one of the key factors that took them from this group here with a few sales to being one of the artists at every festival they do that is getting the majority of the sales. So I provided you with two really clear things that you can do that's going to have a huge impact on moving you into that Pareto group. So the only question now is, how badly do you want this? And are you willing to do the work? Because all of this stuff is learnable. All of the stuff that I would say I'm a master at now, all of it I pretty much sucked at the beginning. And we have the added benefit over athletes that we're not limited by our physical stature, by our ratio of fast twitch to slow twitch muscles, by anything else. Even people who are visually impaired. People like Chuck Close has gone on to be one of the most successful and probably one of the best artists of the 20th century and into the early 21st century. And we're not limited by time. If you want to become a professional athlete, you've got to hit certain benchmarks by the time you're like 20 years old. I never picked up painting seriously again until I was 40. And I know artists who never picked it up seriously till they were in their 60s, and they've still gone on to have absolutely amazing careers. So, two things you can do to move into that Pareto group. One, improve your drawing. Two, master composition. Now, Everything that I've learned about composition, I've put into my online color and composition course. And if you're interested in working with me to do that, then I've included a link in the description. You'll be able to get my entire course. It regularly sells for over $350. You can get it through this link for a limited time with over 80% off. And it comes with a 30-day, no questions asked, money-back guarantee. So I'm so certain that this will have a huge impact on your work. Just like with all of my courses, you can take it, try it out. If you don't think it's giving you more than what you paid for, I'll happily return your money. And here's the great thing about composition. It can take you years to master drawing. It's just a lot of time put in to actually get very, very good at it. You can improve your composition dramatically in a few weeks or a month and actually can come to master it in as little time as 1 year. In fact, I can guarantee I can get you creating better paintings in just 1 day. In one of the modules of my color and composition course, I lay out what are the 10 most common compositional weaknesses I see in paintings and what are the things that you can do to either avoid them or correct them if they're happening. If you just avoid these 10 most common compositional weaknesses, I guarantee you, you're going to be creating better, stronger paintings that have more appeal. And remember, the difference between being on this flat line or being in the Pareto group can be determined by the slimmest of margins. So if you can improve your drawing a little and improve your composition a little, I guarantee you that's going to increase your sales. But if you can master drawing, if you can master composition, that is going to put you ahead of 95% of the competition that's out there. And look, you may not like to hear this, but if you're trying to sell your art, this is a competitive business. It is not a team sport. The question is, when someone looks at a bunch of artists whose work they love, which one do they love the most? That's who they're going to buy. Or which one is the cheapest? That might work in the short term, but it's pretty tough to build a sustainable career and a living off being the cheapest artist out there. So to turn those I love your works and then walking away into I love your works and them getting out their wallet, remember, you need to focus on improving the quality of your work. The two biggest, most important dominoes that are going to have the biggest impact are drawing and composition. So if you want to get into that Pareto group, it's time to get to work. And if you want to learn more about working with me, you can click on the link in the description.